Helen Whately, are you going to back the government's guarantee of 900,000 jobs for, or training places for young people?
Well, I mean, so what we've seen today announced by the government is spending the best part of £1 billion on work placements and government-created jobs for young people. That sounds all very well, but the fact is, and it's the absurdity of it, is just 2 weeks ago we had a budget from the Chancellor which is expected to destroy 200,000 jobs. A year ago we had a budget from Labour which was destroying 150,000 jobs. And we know that the jobs that have been particularly hit by Labour's policies, like the jobs tax, that national insurance rise, are jobs for young people. For instance, jobs in hospitality, where around 90,000 jobs have been lost. So the problem we have here is a government whose policies are destroying jobs, destroying opportunities for young people, now saying they're going to spend taxpayers' money on creating work placements. It's just simply the wrong answer. I mean, to me, give me a moment, it's a classic Labour approach to a problem where they think government has got the answers when actually government is the problem.
Well, would you rather they didn't provide 900,000 training places?
So there is a time and a place for programmes that support people who are struggling to get into work, whether it's because...
Why isn't that time and place now?
Let me just finish. For instance, supporting people with skills, supporting people with work readiness. Now, I speak to lots of charities, for instance, that organise these kind of work placements and programmes. And I say, there's a time and a place, and some of them are really helpful when somebody is particularly missing on the skills that are needed for the jobs in their area. And when we were in government, we had some programmes like this. But it's not an answer if what you're doing is faster than you can support people to get into work, destroying the jobs that actually would otherwise be out there. This is the problem.
But I don't quite understand. I can understand if you're saying, I wouldn't start from here, but here is where we are. Are you saying that they shouldn't do this programme, or are you saying you'd rather they didn't have to, but we will support it?
Look, and we'll look at the details of the specific plans that they have and whether they've really worked out what is the best way to do this, because, you know, if you target schemes effectively to people in particular areas and particular barriers, then you can help people with difficulty getting into work. So I'm not saying, as I said, it's a time and place for this. But the bigger problem they have is what they're doing to destroy jobs and also destroying the incentives to work. So let me just talk about that. So on destroying jobs...
I just want to deal with this particular thing today.
So I talk to lots of employers who say to me, because of Labour's taxes, they aren't able to employ young people. They can't afford to employ young people, or they can't take a risk on young people, for instance, the Employment Rights Bill that's coming forwards. So that's what the government should first and foremost be fixing, along with the incentives to work, which they're totally failing to tackle that. So people are just saying, why bother working?
Let me put to you this point about incentives. I talked to the Welfare Secretary, Pat McFadden, this morning, and he said pretty clearly that unless you had a really, really good reason for not taking up one of the offers of training or education or employment, they would withdraw benefits. That's a pretty good incentive, isn't it?
Well, let's see what they do in practice. Their record on being tough on these sorts of things is not a good one.
But in principle, you think that's a good approach?
Well, So yes, I do agree that if somebody is given an opportunity to work and they don't take it, they shouldn't be able to continue receiving benefits. But the number one reason why people and young people are becoming NEET and not in employment, education or training is because they're moving on to sickness benefits. Yet we just saw a few months ago where Labour was attempting to make some reforms to this problem, people going onto sickness benefits. They U-turned. They abandoned their reforms. They have no plans in the foreseeable future to do anything about this fact that you can have a higher income on benefits than in work.
I get the critique. Can we just talk about what you might do? And I know it's early days and you haven't got detail and all of that, but I was very struck by your leader's Wilberforce lecture this week. She quoted St. Paul, and she said, anyone who does not provide for his own household is worse than an unbeliever. Does that mean that a Conservative government would cut benefits to families where you judge the parents aren't doing enough to support children, for example?
So the approach that we're bringing, and Kemi is leading the way on this, is coming at the challenges for our country, particularly on welfare, with a set of principles and a set of Conservative principles. One of those, for instance, is personal responsibility. First and foremost, you should be making sure, if you possibly can, you're paying your own way, you're supporting your own family. Fairness. I mean, we know people feel at the moment it's really unfair. Let me just talk about unfairness.
She says, St Paul says, worse than an unbeliever, i.e., essentially, you're going to be punished if you don't find a way of supporting your family. That's quite a different approach to welfare than the one we've had for the last 70 or 80 years.
No, as I said, the approach that we're taking on welfare is one of personal responsibility. It's one of fairness. So we've got a situation where people are saying, hold on, the person down the street from me who's on benefits and isn't working and could be working is better off than somebody who's working really hard and has just seen their taxes going up. That isn't right. And the other thing is for welfare to be a safety net. That's what it should be, but it's got completely out of control. Okay. I've been doing some work on the Motability scheme, these free cars that go to people, which was meant to be cars for people who have severe disabilities, but in fact they're going to people for tennis elbow, acne, ADHD, and there are people whose taxes have gone up to fund a car who can't even afford a car for themselves. It's unfair. It's not the way our welfare system should be working.
If I may ask, I'd like to ask you about another topic. You voted for Brexit. Would you agree with David Lammy that the experience since 2016 has demonstrated that we'd be better off with a closer relationship, if not membership of the EU, but a closer relationship, for example, negotiating a customs union?
Well,
deal?
I mean, I feel like people don't want the Brexit arguments rehashed, but we did go through them and we can talk about it again. And the fundamental problem with being in the customs union but being outside the European Union is that you don't have influence over the rules and regulations that come to you as you're part of the customs union. You've got to abide by them. So what David Lammy is suggesting is the worst of all worlds. It's having to abide by the rules of the EU without being able to influence them. It is not the right answer.
All right. One other thing that's been much in the news this week, one other person, Mr. Nigel Farage. Do you believe the accusations against him, and do they matter to you?
Well, I think first and foremost that Nigel Farage should be straight with the public on this question. There's some very serious accusations about things that he has said and about the question of racism, and he needs to give people a straight answer. So
you think he's been weaseling, do you?
Well, if you heard the words, and you've probably got them in front of you, that he'd said in a press conference about this, it didn't sound to me like a straight answer. And I think what the public want from politicians of all parties is straight answers.
So no Reform Conservative deal, all right?
No, not at all.